One of the biggest things I noticed about going through your rough drafts so far is that you're all very general about things, and it's making it hard for me to tell if you got enough research for specifics and details in there, because your rough drafts are missing a lot of specific details. Not that you had to quote or anything yet, but it was very vague, very, like, some of them were, to be a doctor you have to do 4 years med and 4 years of doctor school and then 2 years of residency, the end. And I'm like, oh, there's so much more to it than that. What types of classes? If you're going into a specialty, what is it? So when you get into there, make sure that you are being specific and clear enough, that you're getting into details. That's the point of research, is to get details, to answer those questions and get specifics. So for example, if you were writing a paper about a teacher, someone in their paper wrote that there was not a lot of education required for being a teacher. So this is my response to that, and they noted that. There is usually not a lot of education required for teachers compared to other careers or fields, and that's what I added, compared to other careers or fields, because it's still a lot of work, it's still a lot of education required for that field. Every field is different, so you can't just say it's not a lot required, because there is, all right? But compared to maybe other fields like being a doctor, no, it's not as much education as far as concerned, that you're not performing surgery on someone either when you're teaching. So, at least I hope not. All right. Sometimes I feel like I need to. Cut open your brain, pour it all in. So I made it specific and clear that way. However, 4 years of general degree in a specific field is required. For example, for an English teacher, they must get a BF or S or BA in English, literacy, or writing emphasis. Included in this is extensive research writing courses, at least 2 grammar classes, 6 literary genre courses, and then specialty courses. And then I would go on to list a couple of those specifics from a university and cite that to be even more specific in general about those things. If I was talking about being a doctor, I'd list biology courses. If you're becoming an oncologist, maybe you're having to look at pharmaceutical chemistry, research into radiology and new treatment courses and classes. Be specific, be clear, make sure you're extensive and that you're answering the questions, not being general and vague. Point of a research project, right? Okay. The other thing that I was noticing is the work environment. Several of you were writing about the work environment, and all you did was describe the job and said doctors work with patients, and they may not just do that all day, but that was about it. And that's all I got. And I'm like, did you really find out what it's like to work in a doctor's office or in a hospital? Having worked in a hospital for 9 years, and my husband having worked for 16 years in a hospital, the work environment is more than just working with patients. And it's more than just a job, and it's more than just things you do. So here's my response to that. Doctors work with patients, but not all of the time. Besides dealing with either sick individuals who are very likely contagious, they deal with mental patients, hypochondriacs, and chronic patients. So a variety of different types of patients that they're going to be working with and illnesses. They also have to work shifts in hospitals to cover their patients while in hospital as well. Besides that, it has clinicals, nurse and patient conferences, research, continuing education and conferences, hospital administration duties, having to deal with, they have to go through annual evaluations, they have to be recertifications, boards, etc. I mean, there's a lot they have to do. They're constantly studying and working too. There's new techniques coming up, there's new ideas, there's new medicines. They have to keep up on all of that. It's not just school ending now. They have to continually be learning and analyzing and doing all the time. They have to deal with insurance companies and insurance payments and financial obligations and things like that. They have to, maybe they have a family, or they have to deal with the people's families to balance that out as well. And then if I continue that, right now I've just looked at all of the hard things, but there's other great things about the work environment too, the relationships you make with people that you work with. When my husband worked at the hospital, there's much 12-hour shifts. You're with people a lot, and you're sitting around a desk a lot of the time waiting for something to happen, sometimes whole shifts, nothing happening. You talk a lot. You get to know each other very, very well. You make very good friends. Some of the best friends my husband has made have been doctors. who our families would get together and have barbecues. On the off nights, they'd have potlucks together as nurses and staff. There's a lot of relationships and other things besides just work in a work environment. So you want to make sure that the culture of the work environment doesn't just include the job details. Go deeper than that. Go further. Interview someone. Get someone to talk to and put away phones, please, people. Okay? All right. The other thing is if you were interviewing someone, I wanted to make sure that you are citing and quoting them properly and dealing with that. So, for instance, Mr. Harris, a retired math teacher, stated, so if you interviewed someone or you're reading an interview, refer to them, give their credentials, just like we were doing an analysis paragraph or paper. Who are they? What are their credentials? Why does it matter, right? Make sure that we get that in there. So Mr. Harris, a retired math teacher, stated, you have to really love your job. Once you stop enjoying the work, it's time to find another one. And then next to that, in parentheses, I put the last name of the interviewee. All right? If this was a quote by someone who had interviewed this person, you still reference the person who they're quoting and giving their references. But if this were an online interview of someone else, say I had interviewed this person and it was me publishing it, there I put Roundy instead. Right? By the way, this is my father, and I did interview him, and I did do a research paper on teaching for my master's class, and he was one of my interviewees. So this goes back to that. So since it was a personal interview, I would do his last name, comma, first name, personal interview, and then the date that I did the interview, 23rd March 2001. If this would have published one, like I had actually published this on the internet or in a magazine or something like this interview, then it would be undermining because I printed it and I wrote it up and it was my research. So then I put my last name, first name, then I do the title of whatever the article was, interview with Mr. Harris, then I put the publication data just like if it was a regular source. Yes?
So for us, we use the personal.
If you did a personal interview, some of you didn't get a chance to interview someone personally or via email or anything like that, and you found interviews online, then you would use this one. Either way works. For your revision, I do want your bibliography and your citations included in your revision so that I can make sure you've done it properly before your final draft, so you don't get docked those MLA convention points when we get to the final draft. So make sure that you include your bibliography at the end of your paper. Remember, URLs are not a bibliography. And they do not go into the bibliography. They're not a source. They're not a citation. All right? Make sure that you do them properly. If you need help, let me know. It will be posted tomorrow to be able to submit your revision, but it is due by Friday at midnight. So make sure that you do that and have those in so we can go further. Any questions? Also make sure you include an introduction and conclusion on your revision this time as well. Some of us just went straight to the body paragraphs, perfectly fine for a rough draft. Revision must have an introduction and conclusion. We're good? Okay. You are free.